Sisters and brothers, we are on the journey of Lent. In the wilderness, we fumble and stumble and look for new signs. Let us gather in the Spirit, hear God's word, and pray. Let us stop our wandering long enough to listen for God's call, so that we might be comforted in love and encouraged to serve anew. Friends, welcome to our online streaming of worship Sunday morning, March the 29th, 2020, here at Mayfair United Church. And a really great worship, welcome to those of you who are joining us online live, and a welcome to those of you who will join us later and watch the recording. Special welcome to those of you who are joining us for the first time in any way at Mayfair United Church. We're glad to draw the circle wider. And I know there are people maybe joining us from all over the world. Special welcome to my friends Charles and Stella in Doha in Qatar. Welcome to them if they're watching live or later on today. And just mention a few of our congregants I know will probably be watching. Marilyn and Gary Elvis and Faye Wright and Cornelia. Glad to have you along, as well as the rest of our congregation members. And of course, Reverend Shelley's mom. We're very happy to have you watching as well. And feel free, Shelley's mom, to time my sermon, because everyone else does. There are a few things I just wanted to mention by way of life and work of our church. We've made many adjustments, of course, and hopefully you will receive a call, or you have received a call this past week from a member of our congregation. We are phoning every person on our household list to offer support and love. If you haven't gotten that call yet, I think we haven't called the letter S yet, so please be patient. You will get a call, and of course, feel free anytime to phone Reverend Shelley or myself here at the office, and we will check our messages daily, and our numbers are on there as well if you need to get us at home because it's an emergency. We will have a coffee time online with the wonders of Zoom, which is an online meeting format, and we'll use Zoom again this Thursday morning at 10 a.m. to meet for coffee. We had two folks join us, one of whom it was their first time on Zoom, so it's very easy to use, and the link will be sent out a little later in this week. And of course, on Thursday night at 7 p.m., we'll continue our Thursday night Lenten study. And everyone is welcome. You don't have to be reading the devotional. We get off topic quite quickly and yet very much on topic for the Lenten themes that we are all walking these days. And so please join us 7 o'clock for our Lenten study. And again, that link will be publicized on our Facebook, on our webpage, and through our emails. And that just reminds me, feel free to watch our website, mayfairunitedchurch.org. Remember the ORG because we're an organization. mayfairunitedchurch.org. And we have, Sherry Eby has put a beautiful little link for our COVID-19 updates. And every email and all of our links will go out on that page as well. And you can keep in touch with us by following along at those updates. One idea that we've had come to us here at Mayfair United Church is the idea of purchasing grocery cards for those who are in need of help. Many of you will know that the Friendship Inn isn't operating quite as robustly as it has before. It can't offer hot meals indoors, but is offering takeout. But we know that there are many people who rely on a number of places in this city for hot meals, and those places are either closed or limited in capacity. And so a whole bunch of people are in need of groceries, they're in need of food for their families, and you also know that with children being home from school, often there are children whose only good meal is at school. And so we want to, as Mayfair United Church, provide groceries if we can to folks. And so the council has asked me to ask you to purchase grocery cards. I would suggest that you purchase them from grocery stores on 22nd Street. I think there's a No Frills and an independent grocery stores down near the Confederation end of 22nd Street. And if you could buy grocery cards from there, $25 or $50 cards, that's all we need. And we're going to ask you to mail them to Reverend Shelley's house, and we will be producing that address for you by email later in the week. So get out and buy some grocery cards. If you can spare a few dollars, $25, $50 grocery cards, no frills or independent, down on 22nd, that would be great. We'll mail them to Reverend Shelley's because that's a mailbox that's consistently watched, whereas the Mayfair United Church mailbox is left alone quite a lot of hours of the day. So let's get in the grocery card, and we will hand that out to those grocery cards to social workers and other street level workers that we know that have clients that need groceries, so that the food gets to the right people right away. Now, at Mayfair United Church, we traditionally have a time of sharing celebrations and then concerns, and that's a way that we as a community deepen our sense of community with each other and with our God by listening to celebrations and concerns from the community. We don't put them all into a prayer on the Sunday service, but we do lift them up so we can hold folks in prayer as the weeks come. And so we're going to try this this week again. Those of you who have a YouTube account or a Google account can write comments in the comment box on our YouTube live feed. And Reverend Shelley is going to read those comments out, and we hope that they will come immediately. So just take a moment and write some celebrations or some joys, some thanksgivings if you have them, for the community. And of course, we're going to go over to Reverend Shelley at the computer here and see what she can find for us.
Hi, good morning, everyone. There is a little bit of a lag here on between the live stream and the chat, so I can actually still see Reverend Dave talking here on my screen. But we'll just take a moment, taking a moment to listen for joys and celebrations. It may seem a little strange. Well, I know the camera is right on me, but we will just wait. Now I can see me, so the lag isn't too long. But if there are celebrations or joys, please feel free to share them in the chat at this time. Perhaps while we're waiting, I'll just share one joy that our camera person, Sherry, and I were just talking about earlier, and that is the amount of creativity that is just happening in the world right now. Mostly we're able to see it online, but people that are doing fun things, funny things, and making things happen on Facebook. We do have a couple of joys and celebrations here. Molly Jordan is joyful that the weather is beautiful and allows her, and I think many of us, to get into our yards. Darcy Maddock is celebrating having her son with her. And from Zeke, it was his Uncle Sean's birthday. So happy birthday, Uncle Sean, from all of us. This is great. Yes, and Reverend Dave and myself, we're both very thankful for Sherry and her technological abilities, and that she's sharing her gift with us, with you, with this congregation. Well, and actually with the whole world. So thank you for sharing those celebrations. We'll take a moment now if there are specific concerns or notes that you would like us to know, to share with us, to be able to hold you in our prayers throughout the week. Of course, we are holding those folks who are feeling isolated, and especially those who won't be able to see this feed for whatever reason and are feeling disconnected from their community. Invite you all to consider ways that you might connect. Perhaps a phone call, perhaps letter. Remember that? Those old-fashioned things people used to do. And so we do have another, it's both a celebration and concern from Darcy again, that their close friend Sandy has left us to be with God. She was unwell, but is now in a better place. So we think of you, Darcy, and your friend Sandy's friends and family. Cornelia is sharing how much she is appreciative of water and power and gas service. Yes. Thank you to everyone for sharing celebrations, concerns, and please feel free, if you want to add anything into the chat, that they will be seen, they just won't be spoken out loud. We do have one other concern. Thank you, Molly. We're thinking of those who are struggling with mental health issues in this time of isolation, just exaggerating the sense of loneliness, and may the rest of us be able to reach out. Thank you, everyone, for sharing.
And I have one concern to share with you folks. Last night, a dear friend of Reverend Deb and I passed away at Oliver Lodge. Her name was Mariana Saley, and I've lifted her name up a number of times in worship for prayer. Marianne and I were connected through our deep work in reconciliation. In fact, I was speaking to our friend Lorna Arcan this morning, who called her a warrior. And she was, in fact, a warrior woman, strong in spirit. And on behalf of the Anglican Church here in Saskatoon, Marianne worked and worked and worked in partnerships all over the city for reconciliation, and also worked with the Women Walking Together group who supported the justice needs for missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls. And so Marianne has left a great hole in the reconciliation work here in Saskatoon, and we are very fond of her. She was a strong, strong spirit, and we will miss her. And our prayers go out to Roger and his whole family this day as we prepare to mourn Marianne's loss. I would invite you to take a moment to prepare yourselves to pass the peace in this time of crisis and chaos with the pandemic that's upon us. We cannot forget that Christ has given us peace in our hearts to share with each other. And remember, peace doesn't mean the absence of strife. Peace means a sharing of the joy of God that's in your heart with others, and a word of hope and a word of kindness. At Mayfair, we like to use many different symbols. We use this one. I like this one, peace. We could do peace like this. You can snap your fingers and point. You can do the deep bow. Whichever way it is, an elbow bump. If there's nobody in the room with you right now to turn and pass the peace with, feel free to go to the doorway of the room and just yell, "Peace of Christ," to everybody who is in your home, or stand at the window and whisper it out to the community. I'll give you a minute just to say, "Peace of Christ to the world. Peace of Christ to you all." And now it's time for time with our children, as we say at Mayfair, time for some learning with our children. We're going to go way over, socially distanced, over to the fig tree to Reverend Shelley.
Good morning again, everyone. So I have a photograph here. Sherry is going to zoom in to see it up closer, as close as she can get. I think even if you can today, Jesus' disciples saw the stones of the beautiful big temple in Jerusalem, and they said, "Oh, these are so amazing. This will be here forever. We love these stones. Look at this." And Jesus just stops them for a minute and says, "You know, it's pretty amazing, but they won't be here forever. Even Stonehenge in 4,000 years from now, we don't know what will happen with these stones. But Jesus tells the disciples, what will be here forever with us, with you, is God's love and God's presence, forever and ever, no matter how long the stones last. And he tells the disciples and the people that are gathered around him, you need to watch for God's presence. You don't maybe see it the same way as you see the stones here or the big church building. It's not as obvious, but you have to watch for it. So I invite you to think about how you might watch for God's presence, especially in this time when we're not as close to other people, or we might be spending a lot more time indoors. But I wanted to tell you really briefly about an experience I had yesterday where I saw God's presence in the kindness of a stranger. I was walking my 2 dogs, and we were very careful. We weren't close to other people, but we saw people, of course, and up ahead I saw one of those little private buses pull up to the sidewalk and stop, and the doors opened, and I knew somebody was going to get out. So I waited so that I wouldn't have to pass too closely. And a person who turned out to just be so kind got out of the bus. He turned to the driver and blew a kiss. And then he turned to me and said, "Oh, what beautiful dogs." And I was just so touched, and tears even came to my eyes that this kind person, even in a time of fear and when we're not supposed to be too close, and we're not supposed to shake hands or kiss, but he blew a kiss and he said something really kind to me and went on his way. So watch for God's presence. It will be here forever with us. And those are the things that we will remember. Amen.
Our scripture lesson this morning comes from the Gospel of Mark, which we've been walking through for the last number of weeks. And this is from chapter 13 of the Gospel of Mark, verses 1 to 8 and verses 24 through to 37. As he came out of the temple, one of his disciples said to him, "Look, teacher, what large stones and what large buildings." Then Jesus asked him, "Do you see these great buildings? Not one stone will be left here upon another. All will be thrown down." When he was sitting on the Mount of Olives opposite the temple, Peter, James, John, and Andrew asked him privately, "Tell us when this will be, and what will be the sign that all these things are about to be accomplished?" Then Jesus began to say to them, "Beware that no one leads you astray. Many will come in my name and say, 'I am he,' and they will lead many astray. When you hear of wars and rumors of wars, do not be alarmed, for this must take place, but the end is still to come. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be earthquakes in various places. There will be famines. This is but the beginning of the birth pangs. But in those days, after that suffering, the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light, and the stars will be falling from heaven, and the powers in the heavens will be shaken. Then they will see the Son of Man coming in the clouds, with great power and glory. Then he will send out the angels and gather his elect from the four winds, from the ends of the earth to all the ends of heaven. From the fig tree, learn its lesson. As soon as its branch becomes tender and puts forth its leaves, you know that summer is near. So also, when you see these things take place, you know that he is near, at the very gates. Truly I tell you, this generation will not pass until all these things have taken place. Heaven and earth will pass away, but my words will not pass away. But about that day or hour, no one knows, neither the angels, nor the heaven, nor the Son, or only the Father. Beware, keep alert, for you do not know when the time will come. It is like a man going on a journey when he leaves home and puts his slaves in charge, each with his work, and commands the doorkeeper to keep watch. Therefore, keep awake, for you do not know when the master of the house will come in the evening, or at midnight, or at cockcrow, or at dawn. Or else he might find you asleep when he comes suddenly. And what I say to you, I say to you all, keep awake. Hear what the Spirit has to say to the church this day. May we be blessed in our hearing and in our understanding. Amen. This scripture is an immensely tough passage to read when we are all already feeling anxious. I read it earlier this week and thought, what a horrible lesson for the middle of a COVID-19 pandemic like the world is living through right now. There's so many words of what we'd say doom and gloom. And even reading it, I felt a bit like Jimmy Swaggart or Jack Van Impe on TV talking about the end of days, and here's how it's all going to happen. Roxella, don't you know? Jack Van Impe used to say to his wife. We are not comfortable when we hear a declaration of a new world to come, with the old things passing away. See, I am about to do a new thing, God says through the prophet Isaiah, and it's echoed in the life of Jesus. See, I am about to do a new thing. Oh boy, does that ever make us nervous. What's that new thing? Do I really have to give up the old stuff? What's that new world going to look like? How am I going to fit in? Wars and earthquakes and famines, Jesus says. Wars and earthquakes and famines will come before the glory. Jesus said that will even be just the beginning of the birth pangs. I love that image of birth pangs. Now, you all know I've never given birth myself, but I have heard that the birth pangs, that anxiety and the breathing and the hurt that comes before birth is a time of great anxiety and a bit of panic. And so Jesus says these earthquakes and famines and wars will be just the beginning of the birth pangs. Who wants to hear that from Jesus? But with the wars and earthquakes and famines and the moon going dark and all these quotes from the book of Daniel that Jesus uses, it reminds me just to take a moment and say that the COVID-19 virus, the pandemic that we're living through, indeed is not a sign of the end times. And the reason I need to say that is because there are Christian preachers out there this very day telling their congregation members and telling anybody who would listen that this pandemic has come on for various reasons and certain people are guilty and our society is corrupt and God is punishing us and these are the end times. And I need you to know that is hooey in my mind. Now, I've never preached during Lent in a time when we are all joined in such a real Lenten journey. Now, during other seasons of Lent each year of my ministry, I know that there are individuals who are traveling times of wilderness, times of feeling lost identity. But right now, no matter what we were journeying through before or still, we are all gathered in unity on a very Lenten journey that is the COVID-19 pandemic. As my beloved likes to say these days, this is the lentiest Lent I've ever lented. This is the lentiest Lent I've ever lented. You can use it, and I can imagine our friend Cornelia laughing right now, because it's just the kind of thing that she would say to me. This is the lentiest Lent we've ever lented, because we're unified in anxiety, in bewilderment, in a being forced to change our ways and our habits. We are all on this wilderness journey together, my friends. I can imagine the scene at the temple in Jerusalem. Peter, James, John, and Andrew, the SWAT team, the usual suspects that Jesus leans on. They always have the questions. They always have the concerns. So Peter, James, John, and Andrew are coming out of the temple. It's their first time, I imagine, in Jerusalem, and their first time at the big temple. They are amazed at the stones, and at the walls, and at the statues. Look, Jesus, look, Jesus. They're like kids in a candy shop or at Niagara Falls. Look, Jesus, look at this magnificence all around us. I love their excitement. I love their passion. We've all been that curious and struck by wonder like that. But Jesus is in a cranky mood, it seems, and he says to them immediately, always looking for the teaching moment, Jesus says, you like all this stuff? It's all going to be torn down. It's all going to pass away. Wow. I can imagine that Peter, James, John, and Andrew were a bit hurt. But they gather themselves, and they screw up some courage, and later in the day they come to him and say, look, Jesus, we heard about you, about all this falling, about the temple passing, the Romans will cease to exist, empire, all of it will come to a crumbling dust. Tell us, do you know when this is going to happen? And are we going to be a part of it? Because that sounds like a really exciting thing to have happen. They wanted to get in on the action. You remember, James and John were the ones that wanted to be assured of a seat at the right hand of Jesus in glory. So Andrew and Peter join them, and they want to know, when is this going to happen, and how can they be a part of it? These past few weeks, it may feel like the church is being pulled down or torn open. Like earlier in Lent, we are being asked to ponder, what is it that we cling to? What is truly important? Have you had conversations with friends and family in the last few weeks about that? Have you read online comments from friends or news articles? People declaring how we are discovering what is truly important about community and about our society. Church is very important for so many of us. I don't want to ever suggest we could just do away without the church, that it could just go away. But we are being asked to wonder, what does it look like to be in Christian community when we don't gather in the building that is the center of our own Christian community? What does it mean for us to love others if we are not in this space that we love so much, or at a time when we can't see the Christian sisters and brothers that we love so much? Maybe this is a time when we are feeling pulled down or torn open by this massive shifts in habits and in routines. I know that this week I've had a number of tears come to my eyes. This can be an overwhelming time. And it's the kind of overwhelming time I think Jesus may have been speaking about, although I don't believe Jesus has brought this about, of course. But there are many parallels between the anxiety, the expectancy, the sense of loss that he spoke about that we are living right now in our lives. In the midst of it all, Jesus' message to us is, beware, keep alert, stay awake. We often read those words at the beginning of Advent. Beware, keep alert, stay awake. You do not know at what time or in what places we will witness the Christ rising again in our lives. So many opportunities for us to begin in new ways, to live out what is most important. Just this morning I read a great little article about a man in Jerusalem who after many 15 years I think it was, he returned a rock, they call it a ballista, which was a stone, a round stone about this big, that the Romans used to hurl at the walls of Jerusalem or anywhere else that they were trying to conquer. And this man, when he was a teenager, stole a ballista from a Jerusalem archaeological site. And for 15 years, as he has grown up and had gotten married and had kids, he said he has felt the weight of that stone in his heart, the weight of that theft, and he's felt guilty about it and didn't really know what to do about it. But in this anxious time of pandemic, when he sometimes feels like maybe the world is coming to an end, he felt, I have got to take that stone back. And so he has returned it to the Jerusalem Archaeological Society. That ballista is now back in their presence. And these are his words. And now, he says, when he came across it while cleaning for Passover, together with the apocalyptic feeling of the coronavirus, he felt the time was ripe to clear his conscience. And he asked the society to help him return it to the Israel Antiquities Authority. And so they did. What a great story about the things we cling to and about the shifts that are happening in our lives right now. Is it the end of the world? Most likely not, my friends. But is it a time when we can change in such dramatic and deep ways that we will actually become new people in God's way? For sure. This is that kind of time. This is a time for casting off what has weighed us down. This is a time for us to live in new ways, to watch for when the Christ will appear in our lives anew, maybe tomorrow, maybe later this afternoon, maybe next week. Keep watch, stay awake, be attentive to God's call to new life and new loving. May it be so. Amen. I was mindful this week that our choir is not able to sing for us, and in fact we're not able to sing hymns across the internet in any effective way. And so I remembered that I had a video of our beloved choir from 2016 singing a perfect piece of music for this day and this pandemic. The piece is called "We Are Not Alone." Just give me a minute for technical pause as I go over to the computer and bring that video up for you. Well, last night I said to Reverend Shelley that, and again this morning to Sherry on the camera, that we are not called to be a people of perfection, but a people of faithfulness. And at Mayfair United Church, we have lived that out very well over the years. We are not perfect, but we are faithful. And the beginning of that video, I had it coming through our YouTube feed and our video player. That's why it got so messy, but now we cleared it up and listened, and thanks to the choir for that beautiful anthem, and we are, in fact, not alone. Friends, I invite you into a time of prayer. These are the prayers of our hearts. O God, dream weaver, world maker, wound binder, we kneel before the holy mysteries you've revealed, the holy mysteries of our lives, mysteries of birth and death, of suffering and delight, of joy mingled strangely with sorrow, of hope in the face of purposeless pain, and most of all of love, the saving, lavish love you bring to birth among us. We give you thanks for the gift of your presence in Jesus, whose Spirit is alive and living with us even now. Lord of love, you know better than we the needs and concerns of our hearts. You are more ready to hear our prayers than we are to lift them up to you in faith. Compassionate God, Mother of all mercies, hear our prayers. Specifically this day, God, we pray for those in this city, in this province that do not live in privilege, do not have the resources, the family supports, the financial supports that they may need in this time of crisis and chaos. We pray for those who know what the word chaos truly means as this pandemic undoes their lives, breaks them down in ways that are treacherous and sometimes fatal. And for all those known to us and those known only to you who are ill or injured, who face hunger, homelessness, or unemployment, we're suffering from abuse, desperate, are lonely or afraid. We ask you to bless your children, God. Enable us to do the ministry of Christ Church. Help us to grow together in love and faith through Christ Jesus, our rock and our redemption. Amen. And now may the Christ who walks on wounded feet walk with you on the road. May the Christ who serves with wounded hands open your hands to serve. May the Christ who loves with wounded heart open your hearts to love. And may you see the face of Christ in everyone you meet, and may everyone you meet see the face of Christ in you. Amen.